Start fast and rest late. That is the first key to the Washington Commanders getting a win in Week 18 and carrying momentum into the NFL playoffs. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. I'm also helping out this year with WUSA9.com's local coverage of the team. And I'm here with you here on the program every Monday through Friday. I thank you for joining me here today. Everydayers, I appreciate you for joining me every day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, in which we're going to talk about the Washington Commanders being led by a future Hall of Famer onto the field this weekend against the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to talk about the importance of solving some of Washington's biggest enigmas. And we're going to talk about first the importance of getting a fast start to carry extensive or critical momentum into the NFL playoffs. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL, all one word, all lowercase, and you'll get $50 instantly when you place your first $5 lineup. Starting fast, resting late, that is the number one key to the Washington Commanders getting a win over the Dallas Cowboys, but also carrying momentum into the NFL playoffs. That is our first must-do. Every crossover Thursday, we go over 3 must-dos that the Washington Commanders must do this weekend in order to get a win over their opponents. And this week, the must-dos have to do with the game itself, but they also have to do with carrying momentum into the playoffs. And that's why this is kind of the first one and the most important one. Start fast, rest late. We do expect the Washington Commanders to start their starters. The question really comes down to how much will those starters play and who's going to get extra reps and more opportunity, all of that stuff. And that, of course, is the biggest question because there are teams around the NFL that are resting some of their key players. The Los Angeles Rams are resting players. The Philadelphia Eagles are resting players. And I know that sparked a little bit of conversation from some Commanders fans who wanted to know why the Washington Commanders aren't doing the same thing and kind of announcing that some of their key players, like rookie quarterback Jane Daniels, for example, are not going to play this game and they're going to rest instead. And the bottom line from Dan Quinn has been, we're going to go out there and try to win every single game. The number 6 seed is important. We want number 6. We don't want number 7 if we can avoid it, and they can avoid it by getting a win. Because if the Washington Commanders beat the Dallas Cowboys, doesn't matter what else happens in the NFL on Sunday, the Washington Commanders are the number 6 seed. They will have, at best or at worst, matching records with the Green Bay Packers. And because of their NFC conference schedule record this season, the Washington Commanders have the tiebreaker over the Packers. They are number 6. The Green Bay Packers would be number 7. So win, and you're already in, but you're in a better position. You'll play either the Los Angeles Rams or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from there, depending on what happens with their matchups and their games and all that stuff. So the Washington Commanders want to win. Defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. echoed that sentiment a little more intensely than Dan Quinn has. Cliff Kingsbury echoed that sentiment. So bottom line is, like it, love it, or hate it, the Washington Commanders are coming out there to win. And that means you expect some of their key players to play at least some of the game. But if they can start fast, build a big lead, get a lot of momentum, maybe the Dallas Cowboys, not literally, but kind of just you see the effort isn't quite there. They're like, okay, like let's just get this over with. Let's get out of here healthy. Let's get on with our offseason. Then maybe you get the opportunity to pull some of your starters and kind of do what a lot of people want them to do anyway, but still secure that win. The reason that this team needs to start fast, though, is also empirical, or is presented in the data as you go through the season. The Washington Commanders are 9-2 in games this season where they scored a touchdown in the first quarter. They're 2-3 in the games that they have not scored a touchdown in the first quarter. So getting off to a fast start, important no matter what the context is. They're averaging 8 points in the first half in every single one of their losses, while averaging 17 points per first half in their wins. And the only game that they scored less than 8 points in a first half and won, so less than the average first half points when they're losing, was last week against the Atlanta Falcons. We saw the effort that it took to get that done. So clearly, even when this team is full bore competing, scoring early, getting off to a fast start, always, always, always important. For this team, it's even more important because it seems to directly lead to those late game victories and all those things. 14 points are scored. They're scoring 14 points in the second half in their losses, 12 points in the second half in their wins. So you see their second half scoring or margins and their averages really aren't that different. It's those first quarter scoring averages that really stand out in the wins and losses for the Washington Commanders. On the flip side of this matchup, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys defense, they're allowing 14 points per game in the first half this season. They're allowing 20 points per second half this season. So the Dallas Cowboys, a losing team, their actual performance is getting worse in the second half, and teams are being able to score more against them after halftime than before halftime. Certainly adjustments, all those things come into play, fatigue and all that stuff. But when you look at the Dallas Cowboys wins this season, in their wins, they're only allowing 7 points per game in the first half on average. So while their second half average scores are much higher, their first half average in winning games is much better. And it's showing you that the Dallas Cowboys, when they do win games, they come out and they're able to stifle opponents. They were able to do that against the Washington Commanders. The last time these two teams played, they'll be looking to do it again. So again, if you want to see the Washington Commanders rest their players, if you want to see the Dallas Cowboys kind of get rolled over and kind of just give up, it needs to happen early. You need to see the Washington Commanders put up 14, 17 points, I would say, minimum before halftime in order to expect maybe a quarter and a half where you get the backups in and you can sit some guys like Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin. And, of course, that's assuming that Dan Quinn doesn't pull the old okey doke and tell us all week that, they're going out there to win the game, because he's been saying we're going out there to win the game, not we're going to play all of our starters and everything else. And those two things are not synonymous, right? Going out there with every intention of winning a game does not necessarily mean all of your starters are going to start and play. So unless Dan Quinn kind of pulls a rug out from all of us, which would be hilarious, to be quite honest, that is the expectation in this game. But either way, whether it's Marcus Mariota, Jeff Driscoll, Sam Hartman, I don't care who's on the field, the Washington Commanders want to build momentum heading into the playoffs. The key to doing that this weekend is going to be scoring early in this game, especially in the first half. And again, if the starters do play, doing that opens the door to resting players. Jaden Daniels is a player that obviously a lot of people want to see resting before the playoffs, especially the fact that we don't expect Tyler Biadasz to be available this weekend. Right tackle Andrew Wiley is getting better. I'm kind of on the fence. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play this weekend. If he does play this weekend, I think he's the kind of guy that you would love to get some rest and get him off the field a little bit. Cornelius Lucas has not been practicing this week with the team, so fully expect Trent Scott to either be in the mix or be the right tackle this weekend. Brian Robinson Jr., as much as he in the ground game have kind of struggled to really set the pace here late in the season, you still know that he's going to be incredibly valuable and important to what this Washington Commanders team is going to accomplish in the postseason. So if you can get him some rest, keep him from getting banged up, as much as every player is kind of banged up at this stage of the season, you want to be able to do that. Terry McLaurin, no duh, why you want to keep him rested. Zach Ertz, keep him as fresh as possible. Although Zach does have some incentives, and he's like 9 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he makes another $750,000. I'm sure he would love to have that money, but he would also love to be healthy for the playoffs. So if you can keep Zach Ertz fresh, and look, extra reps for guys like Chris Rodriguez Jr., Jeremy McNichols, Ben Sinnott, all of the wide receivers, none of that stuff is going to hurt this team going into the playoffs. You would love to get extra work, get extra experience, more reps, more opportunities for some of these guys as we get into the postseason. Penalties are piling up at the end of the year. Turnovers are becoming a problem at the end of the year, and an unpredictable quarterback is waiting for the Washington Commanders this weekend, potentially. It's time to clean up the act and take control. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Prize Picks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action, and that is where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and you want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and you do it for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds if you want to, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. And this week, I'm going to tap into Washington Commanders tight end Zach Ertz for more than 37.5 receiving yards. There's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill them in. If there's a part of your life that you want to rewrite or a plot twist you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life that you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide your journey. Whether it's learning to set up boundaries, tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you develop your skills for a better tomorrow. So even if you've never tried it, the benefits are clear. Find someone to talk to and gain fresh perspective that can make all the difference in how you navigate life's ups and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The penalties are piling up as we get into the back half of the season. Turnovers are creeping in, becoming a problem, and the Washington Commanders may face an unpredictable quarterback. All of that is coming up, and it's time to take control of it if you're the Washington Commanders. And if you want to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, all you got to do is sign up to be an insider today. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders, and from there, you text me. I'm going to text you. We'll have a lot of conversations, a lot of fun, including access to our exclusive insider-only Zoom conferences where we all get together in a private conference and just talk about Washington Commanders ball. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. You can try it out for free for the first 2 weeks. See if you like it. Stick around if you do. Going back to our must-dos, our 3 must-dos for the Washington Commanders to beat the Dallas Cowboys and build some momentum for the playoffs. Number 2 has to be play clean, right? Number 1, you want to get off to a fast start. You want to get your key players off the field as quickly as possible. Number 2, part of getting off to that fast start is going to be getting off to a clean start. You want to have few penalties, no turnovers, right? You love to have no turnover, no penalties, no turnovers, but at least few penalties, no turnovers. The Washington Commanders have had fewer than 5 penalties called against them just twice this season. They've had 7 or more in 7 of their games, and they've had 123 yards lost to penalties this season. 105 yards have been lost just in the month of December alone. Offensive holding is the most common foul committed by this Washington Commanders team. They've stalled 6 drives this year due to holding penalties. That's 5th most in the National Football League. And they've been called for 12 holding penalties in the last 5 weeks alone, after just 4 in the first 5 weeks in the season. In fact, I actually remember having a very specific conversation with guard Sam Cosmi during the course of the early part of the season, saying with a quarterback back there that you guys are still getting to know, he moves around a lot. You're not necessarily always knowing where he is behind you. Typically, holding penalties become a bigger factor when those types of situations arise. And I kind of asked him, what is it that's allowing you guys to not get called for so many holds, even though you've got a quarterback like that behind you who's kind of moving every which way? And Sam, honestly, he was very honest. Sam Cosmi is always a very honest dude. It's something that I really appreciate about him. He basically said, look, he's like, honestly, I can't put my finger on it. I can't necessarily specifically tell you what it is. He's like, but discipline comes into it, all that stuff. Well, Sam Cosmi, unfortunately, as much as he's one of my favorite dudes in the locker room, leads this team with 12 holding penalties. He has had 1 decline. And I'll admit, I don't agree with all of the holding penalties that have been called against him, but still 12 is a lot. And it's cost the team 84 yards. It's nullified 44 yards, and it's stalled out 4 drives alone. Just those Sam Cosmi penalties. Not the most in the league, but certainly up there. So something that the Washington Commanders and, of course, Sam Cosmi himself are going to want to get cleaned up. On the defensive side of things, cornerbacks Noah Igbenogany and Benjamin St-Juste each had 7 defensive pass interference penalties called against them. St-Juste had another one that was declined, so he actually has 8 called, but only 7 that were accepted. And the 2 have combined to give up 12 first downs via penalties alone. In fact, they account for 12 of the team's 18 defensive pass interference penalties this season. That's 67% between just those 2 defensive backs. That is the biggest penalty issue for the defense this year. And from weeks 2 to 9, it was one of those 2 drawing every DPI. Nobody else from weeks 2 to 9 in this NFL season, no other secondary players drew defense pass interferences, not named Noah Igbenogany and Benjamin St-Juste. And look, Noah Igbenogany, if you go back every day to the beginning of the season, I told you, he's a very physical dude. He's a very grabby dude, handsy dude. He's going to get flagged. I pretty much said, expect him to get flagged at least once per week. And he has not necessarily made me lie. Hasn't been once per week, which is good, but he's not proven me to be a liar. But in the past 2 weeks, 3 have been called on Marshawn Lattimore. And yes, we don't agree with all of them. 2 of them on Michael Davis. And that's just, it's becoming a bigger problem, more consistent, more spread across the secondary. Rookie Mikey Sanderstill has been flagged for 1 this season. Equally, the team has committed 18 false starts. That's 10th most in the league, costing them 90 yards, stalling 11 drives. So between those holds on offense and the false starts, you're talking 15, 16 drives, guys, getting stalled out. That's about a game and a half's worth of drives just wiped out to penalties. And then we get to turnovers. In the first 10 weeks of the season, the Washington Commanders offense turned the ball over 4 times, 2 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. Well, I shouldn't say offense, but the team turned the ball over, 2 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. In the last 7 weeks, 7 interceptions, 4 lost fumbles. That is a massive uptick in turning the ball over. They got to get all that stuff cleaned up, and this presents an opportunity to do so. Something that Cliff Kingsbury talked about, saying that they haven't played their best football yet this season, so they want an opportunity this weekend to do so. Third thing that the Washington Commanders must do to not just get a win against the Dallas Cowboys, but take some good momentum into the NFL playoffs, play smart against a potentially unknown quarterback. Dan Quinn talked about it. Playoff football is different. Joe Witt talked about it. Playoff football is different. Cliff Kingsbury talked about it. Playoff football is different. You're going to get a lot of unknowns in the postseason. You got to be able to react to those. Well, the Washington Commanders may get an unknown this weekend, which isn't going to be as effective as a playoff caliber unknown, but quarterback Trey Lance expected to at least get playing time, may potentially start and play this entire game against the Washington Commanders. Dan Quinn, when I asked him about Trey Lance, he said, quote, "Trey is an excellent player, and I really enjoyed spending time with him. He's a fantastic athlete, can work outside the pocket, the keepers, throwing on the run, all of that." And so we prepared a little bit when we saw him in the first game, but yeah, he's really an athletic outside the pocket, can move, he can rip it. He's a talented guy, end quote. Joe Witt Jr. on Trey Lance said, quote, "Trey's a high pedigree guy, and he's a really good dude. I like being around him. And if he comes out, we know that he's going to have the ability to use his legs a little bit more than Cooper Rush. And that's what we have to make sure we're going to be prepared for." The pass game is going to be very similar if it's Cooper or Trey, but the ability that Trey has with running the ball, he makes it a little bit more difficult from that standpoint. I asked Washington Commanders linebacker Frankie Louvu about defending an offense that has a guy like Trey Lance who can obviously move, and not only can move, but will move very, very often, but also having a running back like Rico Dowdle who likes to get up and down the field very, very quickly, kind of basically bringing them a pre-installed play action ability before they ever establish the ground game. And basically, Frankie said what you would kind of expect him to say. It's assignment football. It's smart assignment football. Don't get sucked in to one thing one way or the other. If you've got a fit over here and he's rolling out over there, don't get sucked into that rollout so much that you leave your fit completely abandoned. Also, when he's rolling out, don't leave your assignment. If you've got a tight end leak assignment, watch that tight end leak. Don't get sucked into that rollout action, chasing down Trey Lance, and you end up leaving a guy wide open behind you that takes off for an explosive play. So these are the kinds of things that Frankie Louvu, one of the leaders on this team, knows has to happen. Joe Witt Jr. talking about playing that disciplined style of football. So we'll see if they can do that, because those are the types of things these offenses in the postseason are going to try to stress you out even more than they did in the regular season. They're going to pull some things out of their hat that you haven't seen before. Going up against mobile quarterbacks this year, the most like Trey Lance, I would say, that they've faced was Kyler Murray back there week 4 of the season, allowed 145 total yards for Kyler. Jalen Hurts is another one, 260 total yards. Obviously, Trey Lance is not up to the level of those two guys, but just stylistically, as far as how much they like to move the pocket, things like that. That's what Trey Lance brings. You expect a lot of mobility, lots of moving pockets, those types of things from Trey Lance when he gets out there. Bobby Wagner is going to be another linebacker we're going to talk about today, anchoring the defense, and key players are stepping up across the board. This team is poised to dominate and shut down any surprises the Cowboys throw their way. And we'll tell you which players are key to doing that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers, you can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a dub at the end of the season. I love betting on which players are going to score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, all of it. It's a lot of fun. For me, I do it very responsibly. $1, $5, $10 bets, nothing super crazy, nothing like that. You can do that, or you can take straight up action like the Washington Commanders, who are minus 230 favorites to beat the Dallas Cowboys on the money line this weekend. If you think the Commanders can make a run to the Super Bowl, You can get plus 3,500 odds on that right now. So go to FanDuel.com, join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports bet partner of the National Football League. With Bobby Wagner anchoring the defense and key players stepping up across the board, this team is poised to dominate and shut down any surprises the Dallas Cowboys might throw their way this weekend. That's how we're wrapping up today's episode. That's how we're wrapping up the week. My non-quarterback X factor for this game is Hall of Fame linebacker, future Hall of Fame linebacker, Bobby Wagner. Stopping the run and a more mobile quarterback or a savvy backup, even if it's Cooper Rush, is going to absolutely be key. And the experience Bobby Wagner has in facing all types of quarterbacks, all types of offenses is going to be incredibly important. The communication that he has, putting guys in the right place, coordinating with each other is going to be incredibly important. Joe Witt Jr. on Thursday talked about how linebacker Frankie Louvu and linebacker Bobby Wagner, their time off the field has really helped them on the field. And Joe Witt Jr. said, quote, I think they play as a unit. The two guys play off each other. They can look at each other and understand what they want to do, especially with all the pit games and the different ways that we run them. I give them the freedom to, on some of our pressures, if they want to change who shows down and who's going to pick and I'm going to give them the freedom to change it up. And they do a nice job. And so they're not selfish guys because that guy will be getting free for a sack. They switch that up. They're never selfish about who that person is going to be. They work as a tandem, end quote. Joe Witt Jr. on his main focus on improving the run defense, which obviously Bobby Wagner is going to be a part of. So, quote, the main focus, making sure that we're aligned exactly where we're supposed to. We're staying in front of our blocks. If we're getting swap runs, we understand it's going to a 2x2 to a 3x1, that we're in our gaps. We're not allowing fast motion to get us out of our gaps. And then on the edges, it's a crack replace. We're replacing. We're not staying back there deep. We're coming up with great eye control, so it's not that difficult. We just got to get it done. We got to get it done. We got to play like the run. We got to play the run like we've been playing the past, end quote. And it sounds like a lot, right? But at the end of the day, Joe Jr. is right. It's simplistic in its idea, right? Where it gets more complicated is in its execution. And if your eyes lure you out of the area, so we just talked about with Trey Lance, if movement from Trey Lance draws you out of your gap or away from your fit or away from your replace, whatever it is, whatever your assignment is, that's when big things can happen and bad things can happen. Bobby Wagner is going to be extremely instrumental in making sure that not only is the defense aligned, he and guys like Frankie Louvu are communicating properly on who's doing what and keeping guys in line, making sure they're playing their assignment. Turn to the insiders, as we always do, for their non-quarterback X factor. And we've got a tie at the top of the votes. Luke McCaffrey and Chris Rodriguez Jr. both tied for the most votes by insiders as who's going to be the non-quarterback X factor. A little bit of a backup flavor here. I think you can tell which way the insiders are leaning towards this game going as far as how long the starters will be active. I told Chris Rodriguez on Thursday that he was leading at the time in voting, and he told me to tell you that he very much appreciates your love. He appreciates the support, and he's hoping he can prove you right. Running backs as a whole got some love. Michael Davis, Terry McLaurin, Dante Fowler, the offensive line, Noah Igbenogany, Ben Sinnott, Olamide Zaccheaus. The secondary as a whole, Brian Robinson and Frankie Louvu, all getting love as well. Not a single insider voted for Bobby Wagner. I'm the only one that voted for Bobby Wagner. That's okay. Me and Bobby will be okay. Insider prediction, everybody predicting a Washington win and predicting it by an average score of Washington Commanders 30, Dallas Cowboys 17. My predictions this season, I'm 11-5 on the year, picking straight up. I'm 10-6 against the spread. The Washington Commanders are favored to beat the Dallas Cowboys by 4.5 points on FanDuel. The over-under projected score, 44.5 total combined points. I am predicting fairly similar score, actually. 31-10 is my prediction. I'm taking the Washington Commanders by 21 points. In this one, I have predicted more than a 2-touchdown win by the Washington Commanders twice this season. They lost the Dallas Cowboys. They nearly lost the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not scared. I'm coming back at it anyway. 21-point win for the Commanders this weekend. Total points scored 41, so I'm coming in under the over-under of 44.5 points. In the next episode of Locked On Commanders, we will be talking about the regular season finale, Washington Commanders at Dallas Cowboys. I'm scheduled to fly actually 12 hours, 24 hours from the time I'm recording this. I will already be in Dallas. So in the meantime, if you've got any questions or comments, text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL. Whole new format. You got Madman Tyler rolling in the morning, Barbershop, Real Conversation Vibes with Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it's twice per day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, everydayers. Thanks for coming through every single day. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.